I was the only one my mother ever pushed out of the house because she said I needed to grow up. After college, I was told to pack my things and start living on my own. It'll make you a man, she said. Meanwhile, my younger sister stayed behind, rent-free, responsibility-free, with my mom still cooking her meals and folding her laundry well into her 20s. I struggled for years. Cramped rooms, cheap noodles, working 2 jobs just to afford a shoebox apartment and some peace of mind. No one checked in. No one offered help. Then one day, out of nowhere, I received the deed to my grandfather's apartment. A tiny, aging flat, but it was mine. The only real inheritance I'd ever had. I thought I could finally breathe until my mom showed up at my door, with my sister, her newborn, and a very familiar tone in her voice. "You're a man. You don't need a place like this." "But your sister, she does." I said nothing. But not for long. I always knew I was different from the rest of my family, but I never realized how intentional that difference was until much later. Growing up, I wasn't a difficult kid. I followed the rules. Got good grades. I helped out around the house, fixed things when they broke, and stayed out of trouble. But for some reason, that was never enough for my mom. If I wanted something, the answer was usually a version of, "You'll figure it out yourself." And I did. My younger sister, Olivia, on the other hand, was treated like porcelain. She could crash a car and somehow end up with a newer one. Missed a deadline at school, and it was the teacher's fault. When she got pregnant at 23, the boyfriend vanished. My mom didn't raise her voice. She redecorated the guest room for the baby. Meanwhile, I was living in a basement apartment with mold in the bathroom and working weekends just to afford a space heater. After college, my mother sat me down with what she called a loving ultimatum. "You've got to move out," she said. "You'll never grow into a man if you're still living under my roof." I asked where I was supposed to go, since I didn't have a job yet. She smiled and said, "You're smart. You'll figure it out." No backup plan. No offer of help. Just a pat on the shoulder and a bag of leftovers. I didn't hate her for it. Not then, at least. I thought she was just pushing me to be independent. And in some twisted way, maybe she believed that too. So I left. Moved into a shared flat with 2 strangers. Found temp work doing data entry. Took night shifts stocking shelves at a grocery store just to make rent. Every time I called, the tone was the same. "Oh, Olivia's doing well. The baby's teething. I'm exhausted." And when I mentioned how hard things were on my end, the replies were always vague and brisk. "Well, that's life. Hang in there. You're strong." I became the invisible child, the one they didn't worry about because I could take care of myself. And so I did. For nearly 10 years, I kept my head down. I didn't complain. I built a modest life on my own terms. Eventually, I got a stable job as a logistics coordinator. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills. I started saving, slowly, quietly. Then came the letter. My grandfather had passed away months earlier, peacefully, in his sleep. I'd visited him every weekend when I was younger. When his hands were too shaky to write, I helped him with bills. When the stairs got to be too much, I installed rails in the hallway. He never said much, but I guess he noticed. Because in his will, he left me his apartment. Not Olivia, not my mom. The place wasn't big, 2 bedrooms, peeling paint, a leaky faucet, but it was mine. Paid off. No strings attached. For the first time in my adult life, I had something stable, something I hadn't earned through exhaustion but through quiet loyalty. When I told my mom, she was polite. But I saw it in her eyes. The hesitation. The unspoken question, why him? She didn't say much then. But a few weeks later, she showed up at my doorstep, with Olivia, her toddler, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was a Thursday. I'd just finished mopping the floor. Something about owning a place makes you care more about clean corners. I was halfway through reheating leftovers when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find my mother standing with Olivia and her 2-year-old daughter, Ava. Olivia was juggling a diaper bag and a sleepy toddler, while Mom had that expression she always wore when she was about to make a suggestion I couldn't refuse. "Hi, sweetheart," she said brightly. We were in the neighborhood. I stepped aside. "Sure. Come in." They looked around like tourists. My place wasn't fancy, but it was clean, quiet, and finally felt like mine. Olivia dropped onto the couch like she owned it, scrolling through her phone, while Ava made a beeline for the only breakable item in the room, an old ceramic lamp I'd inherited from Grandpa. I rescued it gently, placing it out of reach, then turned to see Mom eyeing the kitchen. "You've done a nice job keeping the place up," she said. "Thanks. It's still got some plumbing issues, but I'm handling it." She nodded absently, then got to the point. "You know this apartment is very spacious for just one person." I didn't respond. She glanced over at Olivia, who was now complaining about how small their current rental was and how Ava's crib barely fit in the bedroom. Mom turned back to me. "I was thinking, maybe it's time we reconsidered how Grandpa's gift could benefit the whole family." There it was. Not even 6 months after his passing. I tried to keep my voice calm. Grandpa left this apartment to me. In his will, specifically. Yes, and of course, we respect that, she said quickly. But he didn't know Olivia would be raising a child alone. Things change. You're single. You're rarely even home. Olivia and Iva need stability. Are you asking me to give them the apartment? Just to share it, she said. Or perhaps, you could move in with some roommates again, like before. Let Olivia use this place until things settle. It wouldn't be forever. I nearly laughed. Move back to sharing rent in my 30s. So my sister could have a free home. She kept talking, layering it with guilt. Think of the baby. Think of how hard Olivia's had it. You've always been strong and independent. You don't need as much. But that's the thing. I did need this. Not because it was a place to sleep, but because it was the only time in my life someone had looked at me and said, "You deserve this. Just you." And now, even that was being tugged away, repackaged as a selfish act if I kept it. I looked at Olivia. She hadn't said a word. Just kept playing with Ava, pretending this wasn't about taking something from me. She'd always had that talent. Being the center of every crisis, yet somehow never having to ask for anything directly. I turned back to my mother. I'm not giving up the apartment. She blinked, as if I'd just shouted at her. You don't have to be so harsh. I'm not being harsh. I'm being clear. Grandpa left this to me for a reason. And what reason was that? She asked sharply. I didn't answer. Because the truth was he saw me. When no one else did, he saw the kid who walked him to doctor appointments. Who sat with him on lonely afternoons when everyone else had plans. Who asked him questions not because I had to, but because I wanted to. He saw me. And maybe that was why this place mattered more than any four walls ever should. So no, I wouldn't give it up. Even if it made me the bad guy in their version of the story. I thought that would be the end of it. I'd have said no. Firmly, respectfully. I figured they'd be upset, maybe a little cold for a while, but then move on. Find another rental, make do. That's what I'd always been expected to do. After all, make do. But that night wasn't just a visit. It was the beginning of a campaign. The next day, I got a text from Mom. Just think about it. Okay, you're such a generous soul. I know you'll do what's right. 2 days later, a group photo showed up in the family chat. Olivia, Ava, and Mom all crammed into their tiny rental's living room. The caption read, "Cramped but cozy, making the best of it Pine." It was subtle, but it was calculated. They weren't asking anymore. They were laying guilt on like bricks. I didn't reply. So the next message was more direct. You're not seriously gonna let your niece grow up without space to play, are you? Your grandfather would be heartbroken. I almost threw my phone across the room. My grandfather, the man who gave me this place because he saw how hard I had worked and how little I had ever asked for. The man who told me, in his last lucid moment, you don't owe anyone your peace, protect it. They were using his name now. Still, I stayed quiet. I went to work. I came home. I made dinner. I listened to jazz like Grandpa used to. I reminded myself that holding your ground doesn't make you cruel. But silence, apparently, only made them louder. That weekend, I came back from the grocery store and found Mom and Olivia already inside my apartment. I stood there, keys still in hand, staring at my mother folding baby clothes on my couch while Olivia rearranged kitchen items like she lived there. What the hell is going on? Mom looked up calmly. We used the spare key. You gave it to me in case of emergency, remember? This isn't an emergency. We're just trying to get a feel for the space. Olivia chimed in, completely unfazed. It's actually perfect for Ava. That second bedroom would make a great nursery. You need to leave. Now, Olivia scoffed. Why are you being so dramatic? It's not like you're even using this place to its potential. You live like a monk. My mother said nothing, but her silence was agreement. It was then I realized they weren't trying to share the space. They were planning to take it. Olivia looked around and sighed. Honestly, if Grandpa had known I'd be a single mom, he probably would have left it to me anyway. That snapped something in me. He did know, I said. He knew exactly who you were and exactly who I was. And that's why I'm standing in this apartment while you're breaking into it. Mom finally stood up, her tone shifting from coaxing to cold. You're being selfish. No, I said. I've been quiet. I've been patient. I've given up more for this family than either of you will ever understand. This apartment is the first thing in my entire adult life that's mine. Not borrowed. Not split. Not sacrificed. Mine. They left eventually. But not before Olivia slammed the door hard enough to rattle the hallway. That night, I changed the locks. I didn't text them. I didn't call. I didn't explain myself. I just started preparing for the inevitable next move. Because when people like them can't control you with guilt, they try shame. And when that doesn't work, they look for backup. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew it wouldn't be subtle anymore. The next time I heard from my mother, it wasn't a phone call or a knock on the door. It was a group message, a long one, sent to the extended family chat. Some of you may not know, but Olivia and Iva are going through a really tough time right now. Their apartment lease fell through, and they have nowhere to go. We've been hoping to rely on family in this hard moment, but unfortunately, not everyone is willing to help. It's heartbreaking, truly, when some people forget what family is supposed to mean. There was no name, but there didn't need to be. Within minutes, I started getting messages from aunts I hadn't spoken to in years. Hey, what's going on? Why won't you let your sister stay with you? Your poor mother sounds devastated. She raised you. Don't you think it's time to return the favor? It was like watching a slow-motion smear campaign unfold in real time. Carefully worded guilt bombs wrapped in fake concern. Not once did anyone ask me what I was going through. Not once did anyone ask if I was okay. Because in this family, I'm not the one you worry about. I'm the fallback plan, the unshakable one. The one who always figures it out, until I didn't, until I said no. And suddenly, I was selfish, ungrateful, cold. I didn't respond. Not to the texts, not to the calls, not even to the knock at my door 2 nights later. Mom, again, this time alone. I didn't let her in. I opened the door just wide enough for her to see my face. She looked tired, worn down. Daniel, she said, her voice soft. I didn't mean for this to become a thing. I just thought you'd understand. Olivia's been through so much. And I haven't. Her face twitched, but she didn't answer. I slept on broken springs for 3 years, I said quietly. I walked to work in the snow because I couldn't afford bus fare. You told me that was growing up. You told me that's what made me a man. I wanted you to be strong. You wanted me to disappear, she blinked. I'm not angry because Olivia needs help. I'm angry because the only time I'm ever called family is when someone needs something. Silence stretched between us like a chasm. She finally spoke. So that's it? You're keeping the apartment and turning your back on us. I'm keeping what was given to me. What I earned. What I needed when no one else was looking. She sighed. Your grandfather would be disappointed. No, I said, my voice steady. He's the only one who'd understand. She left without another word. I thought that might be the end of it. I was wrong. A week later, I came home from work to find a notice taped to my door. Request for mediation. Filed by my mother. She was trying to contest the will. The basis: emotional distress and improper influence on a vulnerable elder. My stomach dropped. Not because I was worried about losing the case. The will was ironclad. But because of what it meant. They weren't just trying to guilt me anymore. They were trying to erase me. They were trying to rewrite the story. Make it look like I manipulated a lonely old man into giving me something I didn't deserve. Like I hadn't spent every weekend by his side for years. Like I hadn't been the only one who showed up. The hearing was scheduled in 30 days. I spent the next week gathering photos, notes, texts, anything that proved my relationship with Grandpa wasn't built on manipulation, but memory. I found old voicemails from him. I printed screenshots of my monthly grocery drop-offs, prescription pickups, and hospital visits. I even found a grainy, time-stamped video of us from a neighbor's Ring camera. Me wheeling him down the sidewalk, bundled in blankets, both of us laughing about something I no longer remembered. I wasn't building a defense. I was building a portrait. One they couldn't paint over. The meditation room was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, but in tone. The walls were blank, the table sterile. The kind of place where truth is supposed to be objective, but never really is. My mother sat across from me in a blazer I'd only ever seen at church funerals. Olivia was beside her, arms crossed, eyes narrowed like this was a custody battle over a child. Only the child was my life. They didn't look at me when I walked in. The mediator began with a gentle, practiced voice. We're here today to find resolution around the contested inheritance of Mr. Franklin Hale's apartment, left in full to his grandson, Daniel Hale. Mrs. Hale and Ms. Olivia Hale have filed for consideration of undue influence and emotional distress. Undue influence. That phrase echoed like betrayal. I stayed quiet as they gave their side first. He was very sick toward the end. My mother said, her voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. Daniel was the only one with access to him. We didn't even know he was changing the will until after the funeral. That's not true, I said, calmly. Clearly, they ignored me. Olivia was caring for her baby at the time, my mother continued. We assumed any inheritance would be shared. But Daniel, he isolated Grandpa. He turned him against us. I let them talk. Let them hang their arguments like portraits painted in fog, pretty from a distance but lacking detail. When it was my turn, I slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts, timestamps, and photos, records of the calls I made, The prescriptions I picked up, the times I sat in emergency rooms while they were out of town or offline. He wasn't isolated, I said. He had me. The mediator nodded, flipping through the pages. My mother glanced down, her mouth twitching. Olivia rolled her eyes. I turned to them. You say I turned him against you, I said. But when was the last time you visited him without needing something? Olivia straightened up. We were busy. I had Ava. You know that. I do. And I didn't judge. I just showed up. Every Saturday. Every winter morning when he couldn't shovel the walk. Every birthday, when no one else remembered. He hated store. Bought cake. I paused. Let the silence settle. You say I manipulated him. No. I listened to him. I kept him company. I watched Jeopardy reruns with him on mute because he liked to guess the answers before the host could say them. The mediator smiled softly at that. My mother looked down. I never asked him for anything. I continued. I never expected a single cent, but he gave me this apartment. Not because I demanded it, but because he saw me. I turned toward Olivia. And now you want to take it. Not because you need a home, but because you're used to the world rearranging itself around your convenience. Her jaw clenched. You had a roof when I was sleeping on a couch in someone's garage. You had help when I was rationing ramen. And the one time something is mine, truly mine, you decide it was meant for you all along. I turned to my mother, and you let her. Her eyes welled up, but I didn't stop. You told me to be a man, to be independent. And I was. I left when you asked. I struggled quietly. I showed up without resentment. I gave up without question. My voice caught, just for a moment. Then steadied. But I won't give this up. The mediator asked if I was open to compromise. No, I said, without flinching. Not because I don't care about my family, but because I finally care about myself. The rest of the meeting was a blur. Paperwork. Muted voices. A formal ruling that the will would remain as written. I walked out first. I expected to feel victorious. Instead, I felt hollow. Like I just fought to prove that I was worthy of something I already earned. Later that evening, my mother showed up at my apartment again. No Olivia this time. No, baby, just her. I didn't open the door fully. She looked tired, older. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I didn't realize how much it meant to you. It shouldn't have taken a hearing to realize that. She nodded. You're right. There was a long silence. Then she looked past me, at the living room. He really loved this place. I stepped aside. Just a little. She walked in slowly, looked around, stopped in front of Grandpa's old armchair. He used to sit here and hum when he thought no one was listening, she said. I nodded. He liked Sinatra. She didn't stay long. Before leaving, she turned to me and said something I wasn't expecting. You're not invisible, Daniel. I just didn't know how to say thank you. I didn't say anything. Some wounds don't need closure. They just need peace. I didn't hear from Olivia again for weeks. And to be honest, I didn't expect to. She had always been the kind of person who burned bridges and acted surprised when she ended up on an island. For most of our lives, I'd been the one quietly swimming over to check if she was okay. But not this time. This time I stayed on my shore. Alone, yes, but steady. Life didn't change overnight. The apartment didn't suddenly feel lighter. Some days I still caught myself looking over my shoulder, expecting another knock, another guilt trip wrapped in family values. But they never came. Instead, the silence gave me something else, a clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving. I was choosing. I cleared out the second bedroom, the one Olivia had so confidently labeled, the baby's nursery. I painted the walls a soft blue-gray, bought a second-hand desk, and turned it into a study space, not for me, but for the teenager who lived 2 floors down, whose mom worked nights and couldn't afford tutoring. His name was Devin. I used to help him carry groceries when we crossed paths. Now, twice a week, he sat at that desk and worked through algebra, while I made grilled cheese and played Grandpa's old jazz vinyls in the background. It wasn't much, but it felt like something. One afternoon, Devin asked why I was doing all this. I just shrugged. Because someone once gave me something when no one else did. I'm just passing it forward. Later that week, I saw a sticky note on the study room door, written in the messy scrawl of a 14-year-old. This room makes me feel smart. I kept that note. Framed it, actually, right next to Grandpa's photo. Somehow, the apartment had become more than just proof that I'd finally gotten something for myself. It had become a place where worth wasn't negotiated by obligation, but recognized through quiet action. I never gave the apartment back to my family. But I gave it purpose, and in doing so, I gave myself something even more valuable than space or ownership. I gave myself permission to stop proving I deserved to exist on equal footing. I no longer needed to defend my worth. I was living it. A few months later, I ran into Olivia at the pharmacy. She was thinner and quieter, pushing a stroller with Ava asleep inside. She didn't meet my eyes right away, but when she did, her voice was cautious. Hi. Hey. There was a pause. She reached into her purse and handed me an envelope. Inside was a hand-drawn card, crayons, stick figures, a shaky attempt at spelling. Thank you. She's too young to understand, but I wanted her to grow up knowing that her uncle never owed us anything and still tried to do the right thing. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. Sometimes, forgiveness doesn't need words. Sometimes, it's just letting someone walk away and not carrying the weight after them. That night, I sat on the balcony with a cup of tea, watching the city lights blink like stars that refused to fade. This apartment wasn't just a place. It was a boundary I had drawn, and a future I had protected, not from family, but for myself.